All right, let's talk about something that can make even the most seasoned Etsy sellers a little nervous. Tax time. Specifically, that 1099K form. But what if I told you it's not nearly as complicated as it seems? In this explainer, we're going to break it all down and hopefully turn that tax anxiety into total confidence.
I mean, if you've ever gotten that email from Etsy, seen this form, and felt your heart just sink a little bit, trust me, you are not alone. But don't worry, we're going to walk through this step by step and clear up all that confusion.
So, first things first. Before we dive into who gets one and why, let's just figure out what this thing actually is. Okay, put simply, a 1099K is just a heads up from Etsy to the IRS. It's Etsy saying, hey, this is how much money we processed for this person's shop this year. That's it. It's an informational report, not a bill.
Now, this is probably the most important part to understand, and it's where most people get tripped up. That term, gross sales. It is not your profit. It's the total amount of money that passed through your shop. We're talking the product price, shipping, any refunds you gave out, payment fees, even sales tax that Etsy collected. So when you see that number, don't be shocked that it looks way higher than what you actually kept.
Okay, let's get specific. If you're a seller based in the United States, this next part is for you. There are some very clear federal rules that determine whether or not Etsy sends you this form.
The key word here, you see it right there, is both. It's not one or the other. You have to hit two different milestones to get a 1099K.
First up is the money part. You need to have at least $20,000 in those gross sales we just talked about. And that's for the whole calendar year, from January 1st to the end of December.
And the second piece of the puzzle, at least 200 completed orders in that same year. So let me say it again. You got to hit the $20,000 mark and the 200 order mark. Both.
Let's look at a really clear-cut example. Here's a US seller. They made $25,000 and had 250 orders. Are they over both thresholds? You bet. So Etsy will for sure issue them a 1099K. Okay, but what about this scenario? This seller had 300 orders, way over the 200 order minimum, but look at their gross sales, only $18,000. That's below the $20,000 mark. So, because they didn't meet both conditions, they will not be getting a 1099K based on the federal rule.
Just a quick but really important note for our US sellers. Some states have their own lower thresholds, so it's possible you could miss the federal requirements, but still get a 1099K because of your state's specific rules. It's always a good idea to check your local tax laws.
All right, let's switch gears and talk to everyone outside the US. And for most of you, I have some very, very good news. We're going to talk about why you are likely exempt from this form entirely.
For international sellers, the rule is actually pretty simple. If you're not a US seller, you're not paid in US dollars, and your tax info on Etsy correctly shows you as non-US, then you're exempt, period. You will not receive a 1099K. So let's take this seller from India, for example. They had an incredible year, with sales that are equivalent to 50,000 US dollars. But because their shop is in India and they get paid in their local currency, the Indian rupee, this whole 1099K thing just doesn't apply to them. No form will be sent.
Of course, systems aren't always perfect, and sometimes unique situations pop up. So let's go over a couple of common mistakes and special cases you might run into.
This is a big one. What happens if you're an international seller, you know you're supposed to be exempt, but you still get that 1099K email? Well, this usually just means there's a little error in your account information.
Don't panic. The solution is actually pretty straightforward. It's a simple form called the W-8-BEN. This is the document you need to officially certify your non-US status and get everything sorted out. So what does this magic form actually do? It's simple. First, it's you officially declaring to Etsy, hey, I am not a US taxpayer. And second, once they have that on file, it formally exempts you from these American reporting rules. It's really the key to correcting that mistake. Here's another question we hear all the time. What if you run more than one Etsy shop? Well, Etsy looks at your taxpayer ID number, like your social security number. It will combine the gross sales from all of your shops under that one ID. And if that total number meets the threshold, it'll issue you a single combined 1099K. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's just boil this all down to the absolute most important things you need to remember. Let's go from feeling confused to feeling totally confident about this. If you remember only one single thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this. A 1099K is a report of your total sales. It is not a bill for taxes.
I'll say it again. The amount on this form is not your taxable income. And finally, it's so important to know who to ask for help. If you're having technical problems, like you can't download the form or you don't understand the CSV file, Etsy support is who you call. But for any kind of actual tax advice, like how to calculate your profit or what you can deduct as expenses, you absolutely need to talk to a tax professional. They are the experts.
And that brings us to my final and maybe most important piece of advice. The absolute best thing you can do to avoid tax time headaches is to go into your Etsy account right now and just double-check that your taxpayer information is 100% accurate. A tiny mistake there can cause big problems later. It's really the foundation for everything we've talked about today.